The case file had grown thick enough to choke. Photos, reports, witness statements, a mountain of paper with no anchor. Ivan pinned the symbols on his wall in sequence, spirals and sunbursts and fractured stars, each more elaborate than the last. He traced lines between them, drew circles around connections only he could see. It looked insane. Maybe it was, but the pattern was there. He could feel it. The killer wasn't random. He was building something. The circle was tightening piece by piece. Ivan stared until his vision swam, then staggered back, rubbing his face. His revolver sat on the desk, close enough to reach without looking. He'd stopped putting it away at night. Sometimes he caught himself with it in his hand without remembering drawing it. When the phone rang, he snatched it up like a drowning man to a rope. Murphy. Pause. Then the voice. You look tired. Ivan's throat tightened, but his voice came calm, steady. You're watching me. A chuckle, low and warm. We're both watching, Ivan. That's the point. Two circles, closing together. You slipped in Wakefield. She lived long enough to speak. Yes, the voice murmured. She named it. The circle. Did you thank her? Ivan's hand clenched around the receiver. You think this is art? Theology. It's murder. It's completion. Then finish it with me. Ivan snapped, his mask cracking for the first time. Face me. One-on-one. Silence stretched, heavy and cold. Then, not yet. You're not ready to join the circle. Click. Ivan stood in his apartment, phone buzzing dead in his ear, heart hammering. For the first time, the comm mask slipped entirely. He hurled the phone across the room, shattering it against the wall. His shout echoed in the silence, ragged and raw. When it faded, the whisper remained. 7 remain. By dawn, another body surfaced. A fisherman found him tangled in his own nets on the shore of Lake Superior. Lip sewn, throat cut. Ash scattered in a wide ring around the corpse, mixed with crushed shells. Ivan stood ankle-deep in icy slush, staring down at the body. The sun struggled weakly behind gray clouds, the lake groaning under shifting ice. Deputies worked quietly, their faces pale, their movements stiff. The ash ring seemed to hum in the cold wind. 12 shells had been placed around it, evenly spaced. Always 12. Always. Ivan lit a cigarette with shaking hands, though his face remained stone. Inside, his thoughts swirled fast and jagged. The killer was moving quicker now. Less than a week between killings. The circle was closing faster than Ivan could chase it. He looked out at the black water and swore he saw something move beneath the ice. A shadow, vast and serpentine, writhing below the surface. He blinked. It was gone. That night, Ivan didn't go home. He drove aimlessly through the snow-choked highways, headlights cutting tunnels through the dark. Every shadow on the roadside looked like a figure. Every tree seemed to whisper as he passed. At a lonely gas station outside Ontonagon, he stopped for coffee. The clerk, a kid barely out of high school, gave him a nervous smile. Long night, detective? Ivan froze. He hadn't given the kid his name. His hand went to his revolver before the rational part of his brain caught up. The kid just blinked, confused, holding out the coffee. Ivan forced his hand away, forced his mask back on. Yeah, he muttered, taking the cup. Long night. He left quickly, but the storm inside raged hotter. Was the killer speaking through strangers now? Or was Ivan just cracking? 3 days later, Ivan collapsed at his desk. Deputies found him slumped over the case files, pen still clutched in his hand. They carried him to the cot in the back room, and for the first time in days, sleep claimed him. Dreams came hard and heavy. He stood in the warehouse again, ash piled high, chair bolted to the floor. The circle on the wall glowed faintly, 12 points pulsing like a clock. A figure stood in the center, back turned. Tall, coat draped heavy, boots black with soot. Ivan, the voice whispered, but not distorted this time. Clear, human, close. Ivan raised his revolver, but his hand shook violently. The figure turned, and it was his own face staring back at him, lips sewn shut, eyes hollow. Ivan woke with a scream caught in his throat, sweat pouring down his back. The deputies watching from the doorway looked at him like he was a stranger. He wiped his face, stood, and straightened his coat. His voice was steady when he spoke. "Where's the next body?" By evening, the radio crackled with news. Another victim, this time a young hitchhiker outside Houghton. Ivan drove through the storm, windshield wipers beating frantically against snow. His face was calm again, mask fixed, but his knuckles were white on the wheel. He knew with a hollow certainty what he'd find. Another ash circle. Another silenced voice. Another step toward 12. And with each one, he could feel the circle closing around him too. Chapter 7, Fractures. Snow clawed at the windows of the precinct, howling like an animal. Inside, the air was stale, buzzing faintly with the hum of old fluorescent lights. Ivan sat alone at the table in the interview room, staring at a photo of the hitchhiker girl found outside Houghton. Lips sewn, throat cut, circle in the snow. Her eyes in the photograph seemed to look straight through him. He pushed it away, rubbed his temples. The storm in his skull never stopped anymore. Whispers, images, fragments of words burned into the edges of his sight. Sometimes when he blinked, he swore he saw her lips moving, trying to speak through the stitches. When the whisper came, he didn't flinch. "You're closer now." Ivan lifted his head. The voice was everywhere at once, in the hum of the light, in the pipes, in his own blood. "Where are you?" Ivan asked, voice calm even. "You already know. I'm not part of your circle." A soft chuckle. "Aren't you? How many nights have you gone without sleep? How many times have you drawn the symbols with your own hand?" Ivan's chest tightened. He looked at the wall of photographs and sketches in the briefing room beyond the glass. Symbols scrawled, circles drawn, lines connecting them all. His work, his handwriting. "You're helping me," the voice purred. "Every mark you make brings the circle closer to completion." Ivan closed his eyes, fists clenched on the table. "I'm not your prophet. You're the last point." He opened his eyes sharply. The room was empty. The hum of the light remained, but the words echoed still, louder inside him than out. The deputies avoided him more each day. He could see it in their eyes, the way they turned when he passed, the murmurs when he entered. Even Reynolds no longer barked at him. Instead, the captain just watched, lips tight, expression wary. Ivan didn't blame them. He barely recognized himself in the bathroom mirror anymore. Dark circles carved under his eyes, beard grown ragged, skin pale. A stranger's face, but none of that mattered. Only the circle, only stopping it before the last victim. 6 remain. He heard it in his sleep, in his waking, in every space between. Sometimes he repeated it aloud without realizing until deputies stared. Sometimes he scratched it into the margins of files, his own hand betraying him. 6 remain. The next murder came quickly. An auto mechanic in Marquette, found slumped against the hood of a car in his shop. Lips sewn, throat cut. Ash circle drawn in grease and oil on the concrete floor. Ivan crouched, staring at the blackened ring, the stink of burnt oil thick in the air. But this one was different. In the center of the circle lay not just the body, but words, written in ash across the man's chest. Ivan. His name. The deputies stood back, muttering nervously. Reynolds cursed under his breath, crossing himself. Ivan only stared, his face calm, his pulse a storm. The killer had moved beyond taunting. This was an invitation. That night, Ivan sat in his apartment, revolver on the table, a half-empty bottle of whiskey untouched beside it. Snow rattled the window. The wall of symbols loomed before him, pulsing with meaning only he could see. The whispers came again, but this time he answered. "What do you want from me?" "To finish the circle." "Why me?" "Because you understand." Ivan stood abruptly, pacing. "I understand nothing. You butcher people. You sew their mouths shut so they can't scream. You leave them for me to find. That's not understanding. That's insanity. You listen, Ivan. You hear the silence. That's why you belong.
No.
The laugh came, soft and broken. You've already joined. You carry the circle with you now. Ivan slammed his fist into the wall, cracking plaster. Show yourself. Silence. But when he looked back at the wall of photos, his breath caught. The faces had changed. Every victim's photo, the hitchhiker, the farmer, the woman in the farmhouse, all of them bore his own face now. His eyes staring back at him from stitched lips, pale skin, hollow sockets. He staggered back, breath ragged, revolver drawn before he knew it. He pointed it at the wall, hand trembling, heart thundering. Blink. The faces were normal again. Just victims. Just photographs. He lowered the gun slowly, sweat slicking his neck. He was losing it. Or the killer was in his head so deep there was no line anymore. 3 nights later, he heard footsteps in his apartment. Not outside, not upstairs. Inside. Ivan rose from his chair, revolver in hand, moving silent through the shadows. Heart steady, face calm, the storm buried beneath. He reached the bedroom door. It stood ajar, though he remembered closing it. Slowly, he pushed it open. The bed was empty, the room still. But on the wall above the bed, in ash-black scrawl, was a new symbol. A circle with 11 points. Ivan's hand shook. The whisper came from the dark, inches from his ear. 1 remains. He spun, gun raised, finger tightening on the trigger. The room was empty. By morning, Ivan looked like death itself. Reynolds called him into the office, face grim. "You're done," the captain said flatly. "You're too close to this, too strung out. You're seeing ghosts." Ivan stood straight, jaw tight. "I'm the only one who's hearing him. If you bench me, you lose your only chance." Reynolds slammed his hand on the desk. "You're losing your goddamn mind." "Maybe," Ivan said quietly. His eyes were calm, voice steady. "But if I don't follow this through, everyone loses." The captain stared at him long and hard. Finally, Reynolds shook his head, sinking back into his chair. "Christ help us all. Go." Ivan left the office, coat slung over his arm, revolver heavy at his hip. He no longer knew if he was chasing the killer or if the killer was leading him by the hand. But either way, the circle was closing, and he was standing dead center. Chapter 8. Into the Pines. The storm broke by dawn, leaving the world buried beneath a crust of ice and snow. The highways lay empty, whitewashed and silent, telephone lines sagging under frost. Ivan drove north, deeper into the woods, guided by nothing but a gut-deep pull and the whisper that had been gnawing at him since last night. 1 remains. The words clung like frost to the inside of his skull. He'd stopped fighting them. They were a compass now, pointing him forward. The map on his passenger seat, littered with circles, ink scrawls, and half-legible notes, meant nothing compared to the whisper. He followed it like a bloodhound, hands steady on the wheel, eyes hollow but alert. Somewhere out there, he knew the circle was waiting to be completed. The town of Copper Creek had all but died decades ago when the mine shut down. What remained was a scattering of trailers, boarded-up shops, and a single bar still clinging to life by serving the local loggers. Ivan rolled through the main street, snow crunching under his tires, eyes scanning the empty windows. He pulled up outside the bar. The neon sign buzzed weakly, the word beer flickering like a failing heart. Inside, warmth hit him. Stale beer, cigarette smoke, damp wool coats steaming by the heater. A handful of men sat hunched over tables, their laughter brittle, voices low. The jukebox croaked out an old Springsteen song through static. The bartender, a woman in her 40s with red-rimmed eyes, glanced at him warily. "Coffee?" she asked, already reaching for the pot. Ivan nodded, sliding into a booth. His revolver pressed cold against his ribs, a comfort he hadn't admitted to needing. When the coffee came, he asked quietly, "Anyone gone missing lately?" The bartender froze. One of the men at the bar coughed and looked away. "People pass through," she said after a moment. "Hitchhikers, drifters. Nobody stays long." Ivan stirred the coffee, though he hadn't added sugar. His eyes stayed on hers. Anyone seen drawing in the snow? Ash circles? Anything strange in the woods? A shadow crossed her face. Don't bring that here, she muttered and walked away. The laughter at the bar died to silence. Ivan felt their eyes on him, heavy and suspicious. He finished his coffee in 2 gulps, dropped a bill on the table, and left. The woods swallowed him whole an hour later. He parked the car at a logging trail, snow already reclaiming the tire ruts, and followed the whisper. Trees rose like black spires around him, branches heavy with ice. The silence pressed against his skull until he swore he could hear his own blood moving. Then he saw it. A clearing ahead, unnaturally round. The snow inside tamped down to bare earth. At its center, a circle drawn in ash and pine needles, 12 points marked with stones. 11 points burned faintly, blackened. The 12th remained empty. Ivan's chest tightened. His revolver was already in his hand before he thought to draw it. "Come out," he said, voice flat, steady. And the killer stepped from the trees. Tall, broad-shouldered, coat heavy and dark, boots crunching on frost. The hood shadowed the face, but Ivan felt the stare. Hot, searing, familiar. "You made it," the voice said. Not through a phone. Not through pipes or static. Clear. Human. Ivan raised the revolver. "It ends here." The figure tilted its head. "It only ends when the circle closes. You've killed 11 people." Ivan's hand trembled now, rage and exhaustion breaking through the calm. 11 lives. For what? For silence. For completion. "You're sick," the figure chuckled. "And you followed me here anyway. What does that make you?" Ivan's breath clouded in the frozen air. His finger hovered over the trigger. He could feel it, the moment poised, balanced, inevitable. "Show me your face," he demanded. The figure slowly lifted its hood. Ivan's breath caught. It was his own face staring back at him. Eyes hollow, lips sewn, skin pale as wax. Ivan staggered back, revolver shaking wildly. "No, no!" The doppelganger smiled without moving its mouth. "You understand now." The whisper roared in Ivan's skull, deafening, drowning the forest. "One remains." He fired. The shot cracked through the trees, echoing for miles. Birds scattered in a frenzy from the branches. Smoke curled from the barrel of his revolver, his ears ringing. The clearing was empty. No figure, no body, only the circle on the ground, 12 points waiting. 11 blackened, the 12th untouched. Ivan stood alone, revolver shaking in his hand, heart hammering against his ribs. He dropped to his knees, gasping, eyes darting across the trees. Snow fell in soft flakes, the world quiet again. Had he imagined it? The revolver clattered from his grip, sinking into the snow. Night fell fast in the north woods. Ivan sat by the circle until dark swallowed everything, until the trees became walls and the sky a ceiling of black glass. He hadn't moved, couldn't, because part of him still felt it. The figure was near, watching, waiting, and part of him knew the truth. He was the last point. Chapter 9, the last point. Ivan drove back through the blizzard with both hands locked on the wheel, the revolver resting on the passenger seat like a silent passenger. His headlights carved tunnels through the snow, white walls rising on either side, a coffin of ice. Every few minutes, he glanced at the rearview mirror. Always the same. Darkness, snow, emptiness. But he swore something followed him. A shadow too steady to be tricks of the storm. By the time he reached town, the roads were deserted. The courthouse and station loomed in the dark, their windows glowing faint and yellow like tired eyes. Inside, warmth struck him like a wall, but it did nothing to loosen the frost in his chest. Deputies glanced up as he entered, saw his face, the snow crusting his coat, the revolver in his hand, and looked away quickly. Reynolds was waiting in his office. The captain's eyes narrowed. "Christ, Murphy, where the hell have you been?" Ivan closed the door behind him. His voice was calm, steady, but hollow. "I saw him." Reynolds leaned back, cigarette burning between his fingers. "You're telling me you saw the bastard?" "Yes. And Ivan hesitated. The words clung to his throat like ice. It was me. My face. My stitched mouth. He shook his head slightly. He's close. He wants to finish it. Reynolds dragged on his cigarette, watching him with the weariness of a man too tired to believe. Murphy, you've been on this case too long. You look like hell. You talk like hell. Half the boys out there think you're chasing shadows. I'm not, Ivan said flatly. He's real, and the circle's nearly done. Reynolds exhaled smoke, eyes narrowed. How many more? One, Ivan whispered. His hand tightened on the revolver. Just one. Reynolds ground the cigarette out in the ashtray, jaw clenching. Then we catch the son of a bitch before it happens. Ivan nodded, but inside he knew the truth. There was no one left to catch. That night, he couldn't bring himself to go home. He sat in the precinct records room, alone with the yellow light and the paper smell, staring at the wall of files. One by one, he pulled them down. Victims' photos spread across the table like a deck of cards. The farmer, the hitchhiker, the mechanic, the woman in the farmhouse, the logger, the drifter. 11 faces staring back at him, stitched mouths silent, eyes hollow. And when he blinked, he saw the 12th space waiting. Empty. His space. He reached for the whiskey bottle in his desk drawer but didn't drink. Instead, he took a pen and wrote across the table in large, unsteady letters. I am the last point. The whisper answered, soft as breath against his ear. Yes. The next morning, Reynolds called a briefing. Deputies crowded into the room, their faces pale, jaws tight. Outside, the storm had buried the town in another foot of snow. Reynolds tapped the map on the board. We've got a pattern, like it or not. Every murder's moved closer north. Last one was Marquette. Next stop is Copper Creek or further. He glanced at Ivan. Murphy here thinks the killer's working up to something big. Ivan stood at the back, arms folded. His face gave nothing away, but his chest burned with a truth he couldn't speak. He's not working up to something big, Ivan said quietly. He's working up to the end. A deputy scoffed. What does that even mean? Ivan's eyes flicked to him, steady as ice. It means he won't stop unless we put him down. And if we don't, he hesitated. If we don't, the last victim's already chosen. The room fell silent.